and yet we don't have as much, some school districts say, for textbooks, new textbooks, and for expanding libraries, and foreign languages, and music, and art. I mean, do you guys agree on what the priorities really ought to be here?
Well, I think that last year when we were dealing with the Commission on Educational Excellence, there were several very strong areas of agreement. The early childhood education program was an area of agreement. The technology program that we've been talking about, that was another area of agreement. There were some very substantial areas of agreement between the business community and the education community. And hopefully this year, with the right governor in place, we're going to be able to address those issues and see them attacked head-on. Certainly the issue of quality and diversity in our schools. I mean, we need to address that issue in this state. You know, it's not enough to talk about it, but what do you intend to do about it? Once you learn that there are problems that exist in the schools, then how will you address those problems?
But this past session, as we brought up, you brought up these reform measures, and education and business seemed to be in some agreement, but it didn't get anywhere in the legislature. It didn't even reach debate. I mean, you not only have the problem of trying to fund these changes, but also get the public and the legislature to accept it.
Well, I think, let's be realistic about last year. A major study of any reform in the state of Connecticut normally takes 2 years. In other words, there isn't a major legislative initiative that I can recall that's gone through in a single session. Because what you do is you spend a lot of time educating the first time around. The commission report was probably later than we would have liked it to come out. The debate got started therefore later. But
so you feel with another year of sort of getting people accustomed to it?
I think we joined the discussion. We found out what the issues are that we agree upon. And I think we acknowledge that there's some disagreement. But, you know, as long as we agree we have to do something, I think the education community and the business community are going to work with the legislature to find a way to resolve that. As long as we're talking about making some fundamental changes in things like early childhood education, like technology, and like setting realistic standards for the 21st century. And I think that those are the issues that we want to reach agreement on, and then work together to get there.
We have like 1 minute left. Did you want to ask about diversity?
Well, I wanted to know, you know, as I spoke about before, we've had kind of a buzzsaw of controversy in West Hartford with just the notion of trying to move some students around the town to get some kids out of classes that have 35 in a class and equalize that with some schools that have 20 in a class. A lot of people have said, well, if you can't do that in West Hartford, where are you going to be able to do that? How do you do that? Because the only other way to equalize opportunity, and you talk about that in your platform of making sure that economic status doesn't affect it, is, you know, build another school so you can take some of those kids out of the 35 per kid classrooms and put them in another school. How do you get to that?
Well, I hope that in these regional plans that have been submitted to the Commission of Education, there are some concrete and innovative ways of addressing that issue. Certainly the concept of looking at the charter schools or the magnet schools, those are beginning points, but there have to be some very critical changes in the way we're doing the business of our schools.
Are we going to have to force people to move from one school, out of a neighborhood school, to another school in the community?
We've done it historically. I served on the Board of Education in West Hartford for 4 years when we had some form of redistricting in 2 out of those 4 years, including the redistricting for the 2 high schools. I mean, that's nothing new in education to have to move classrooms based upon where the population is. And I mean, nobody likes to do it, but it happens. And it happens because we are changing communities.
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Egan, Mr. Carson. Next, welfare reform when CT-94 returns.
CT-94 is brought to you by Derby Savings Bank. Connecticut people making Connecticut better.
Welcome back. There's been tough talk from some candidates about welfare reform, but this morning we're talking to 2 people who have spent time in the welfare trenches and have ideas of their own about making welfare work better. Jan Van Tassel of an organization known as the Connecticut Campaign to Make Welfare Work, and the Reverend Benita Grubbs, Executive Director of New Haven's Christian Community Action Group. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good to be here.
Let's ask you about the current campaign, because we know in previous campaigns candidates have talked about welfare welfare reform. The president said he was going to end welfare as we know it. It hasn't happened yet. How do you think things are going during this campaign for governor, let's say, in terms of what you were hearing about welfare reform?
I think just briefly, the difficulty that I have is that there's certainly a lot of talk about quick fixes, and not much of an understanding about really the complexity of the issues and the long history and the problems that people have had over time. So there isn't a lot of realism in what is being discussed.
Is that what you're hearing as well?
I would agree. I think what we get are simplistic, quick fix types of solutions.
Want to give an example?
I'd be very happy to give. I think one is time limits, which certainly the president spoke about, but John Rowland's platform has proposed an 18-month time limit with nothing at the end other than a grant for the child, regardless of the person's ability to find a job, regardless of the availability of child care, regardless of the person's job readiness, whether they speak English or not. A quick fix like that, an arbitrary time limit, doesn't address, as Benita was saying, the underlying problems that the person may need other skills, may need training, and certainly doesn't address the lack of jobs.
But some people would say if we don't go for some sort of time limit measures, that we're just maintaining the status quo and people staying on for far too long.
Well, the reality is that the average number is about the time that they're proposing with time limits. The difficulty, I think, is that it's really not very personalized and the system is not very flexible. And so if there is some flexibility given to individuals and support from within the system, then I think it's possible to do. But there are a whole lot of questions about whether or not the system can be really flexible to do that.
The response to the other candidates by Lieutenant Governor Rourke, who's the nominee of a Connecticut party, is, well, we are changing welfare. We have changed the GA system. We have a couple of pilot programs. I think one began the beginning of October that allows two-parent families to stay together and benefits to continue. We have another one starting November 1st that tests out the limiting of benefits to 2 years and then provides social services and job training and finds you a job if you don't have a job after that period. Do we really need to be doing more, or is it, as Lieutenant Governor Rourke says, something we ought to be testing for a little while before we start making major changes?
Well, for example, with the welfare reform on the general assistance side, the change that was made was really one that was made after intense pressure, but the original proposal by the governor at this point was really negative and would have put a lot of single individuals in distress. Yes, there may be some proposals that are going forward with families and children and a federal waiver that's been approved for that purpose, but it's a pilot program that's controlled by the feds, and there's a limit to how much is going to be done there.
Do you think that the public mood is in your favor now? I mean, one sense is that after the state has had to deal with many, many years of a very difficult recession, that the mood out there is, well, we've had to do with a lot less, and we certainly don't want to be giving handouts to people. Do you feel like you can have the wherewithal to fight against that mood, or maybe you quarrel that that's the mood?
Yes, I would like to address it, because in terms of the campaign to make welfare work, two of the linchpins of that campaign are to promote economic independence and provide and strengthen families. And I stress that because we believe it's not just welfare recipients, but working poor families. We're seeing an increase in the number of working poor families in Connecticut. As you both know, as we all know, the jobs that are being created tend to be lower wage, service jobs, little or no benefits, so that even if people are starting to see some change in job opportunities, we're seeing people who are being held down. We need to provide a transition for people off of welfare that are going to provide the kinds of services, child care, health care, benefits that people need to make the move. We also need to provide them to the working poor. There shouldn't be a conflict between those two groups.
Same question asked of the education reformers, though, in a time when all the candidates are talking about cutting taxes and cutting spending. Is there going to be any money for these support services that you would need for some of these programs?
I think it's a tough fight, but I don't know that we have much of a choice but to really push in that direction. Yes, I understand that there's a limit, but there are all kinds of things that need to be done, in my mind, to push for a future for children, future for families, strengthening families, and we don't have a choice. If we don't do it, then we'll see the increases in crime and everything that all of the politicians are talking about. I'd really like for us to focus on prevention and really trying to strengthen families, and to have the individuals who are recipients tell their stories about how difficult it is for them to make it currently, and what they need in order to make a difference in their lives.
Do you have a price tag for what you need from the state? Do you know how much all this would add up to? Universal health care, additional child care, job training, other support that you need to make this work? Do you know what it'll cost the state?
The shorter answer is we don't have a fixed number, because there are so many different pieces involved in trying to speculate what the value would be in terms of tax paying and getting people off of welfare, and you could argue about that. I do feel that we could do further expansion of Medicaid, which has been done in the last 2 sessions of the legislature, to enable at least the children in working poor families to have access to health care, which would be another major step. That is being provided. Other types of things like child care, if I could just mention them, I think we need to be more creative. The state has made some positive moves, but unfortunately there are a lot of people on waiting lists.
That's correct.
Because of the lack of child care, the lack of support services. And I actually think the public would be supportive of providing services that would enable people to get off of welfare and to work. I don't think they're so angry at folks at being poor as they are the sense that they're not really doing anything to help themselves, and it's a frustration on both sides.
And I think, just to add one other item, which is that some of the current policies are actually much more expensive than they need to be. For example, one person wanted to have her kids go to camp. It was cheaper to go to camp than to have them put in child care. And the decision was made, you can't put them in a camp for the summer, you have to go with that. So it costs the state more money. So there might be ways to take the money and to use it differently.
Okay, thank you both very much for being here this morning. We appreciate it. Next, the men who want to handle our money for the next 4 years when CT-94 continues. Welcome back. Our final guests this morning are the candidates for state treasurer, the Democratic incumbent Joseph Suggs and his Republican challenger Chris Burnham. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
To begin with, just briefly, why should anybody care who the treasurer is of the state of Connecticut? What's the importance of the job?
The importance is it is the cornerstone of Connecticut's finances. The state treasurer is responsible for administering and for issuing all of the state's debt, understanding that the taxes required to service the state debt is one of the highest components of the state budget, and to the extent that the treasurer can do an effective job in reducing the cost of carrying that debt, it can have a major impact on the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. I've been very fortunate.
I just want to ask if that's how you see the job as well.
Well, it's the chief money manager for the state of Connecticut. Our pension fund money for the teachers, the state employees, municipal employees. It's particularly important to we, the average voter, because there's an unfunded liability in the pension funds of about $3.6 billion, and in the second injury fund, which is also another important component of the treasurer's office, which picks up after workers' compensation, that has estimated a $5 to $7 billion deficit. So to the individual taxpayer, this race is important because the next treasurer, is going to have to make up over a $10 billion deficit.
The two of you have been at each other about whether you, Mr. Suggs, have been doing a good job. Your TV ads have said that the return recently has been the highest in the nation. Mr. Burnham, you've said that the return over the last few years has been not where it ought to be.
The lowest in the nation.
Who's right here? I mean, they say figures lie and liars figure, but I mean, you both have differing interpretations.
Well, I don't think it's a different interpretation at all. What I've said is, for the period that I've been in office, and for the adjustments and the modifications and changes that I have made to our asset allocation mix, for the changes that I have made to our manager, the cadre of people who actually manage the money, the result of that have been this. We were #1 in the Trust Universe Comparison Service, which is by far and away the largest comparison service of the major pension funds. Over the past quarter, we were #1. You don't get any higher than that. Year to date, from last year at this time to this year at this time, once again, the Connecticut Pension Fund, at $11.2 billion, which is the highest it's ever been in its history, was once again #1. For the fiscal year '94, which includes a portion of my administration, we were #4 out of the 30 major public pension funds reporting to this independent agency. These are not my numbers. This is an independent comparison agency that has generated these numbers. So on my administration, for the changes that I have made so that we generate the maximum return possible, we have been at the very, very top of the...
Well, when I began this race a few months ago, we took a look at the performance not only over the last year, where it plummeted from 12% in the last year of Borges to 4% under Joe, a 66% drop, but also for the previous 10 years before that. Using the same comparison service over a 3, 5, and 10-year period, we rate in the bottom 5% of this nation, which means that our performance has been so poor that we've left up to $2 billion of unearned revenues on the table, which has, of course, led to the huge unfunded liability in that fund. But, you know, it quickly went beyond looking at the performance of the pension funds and the fact that we haven't refinanced enough bonds and things like that, into what the Hartford Courant called the Suggs shakedown. Whether or not it's appropriate that sitting treasurers solicit directly and willfully from people who do business with their office for campaign contributions. Now, Joe has said, well, I've taken I think you said in the paper $17,000, which of course is false. But in fact, Joe has taken up to 50% of his money from out of state and up to 70% from people who do business.
Let's let you
so it's a matter of ethics as well as performance.
One of the responsibilities of a fiduciary, which the state treasurer of the Connecticut Pension and Trust Funds is to tell the truth. And my opponent has absolutely not done that. The $11 billion pension
I guess
fund
the people will decide that, Joe.
Came under my administration. The 12% return that my opponent referred to was under my administration. It was in 1993 when I was in charge of the trust fund. With respect to campaign contributions, let's put that aside.
Well, we got to get back to that.
Because in point of fact, as all of you know, all candidates all across the board accept campaign contributions from people outside of the state, from people who do not do business with the state, from people who do business with the state. The hypocrisy that you hear here this morning is a candidate who said that he has not accepted any campaign contributions from people who do business with the state, but in fact has, and not only has accepted the campaign contributions, but has solicited our advisors, our money advisors, to pitch his own personal business to see if he could use our money managers to sell his business to, #1. #2, has used at least 2 of our major money managers to have members of that firm not only give campaign contributions, which they have clearly done by his own report, but #2, they have sat on committees that encourage other people to try and solicit campaign contributions. So it's the hypocrisy of saying that you won't do it and then doing it.
Joe, of course, what we're recognizing here is that you are defrauding the Connecticut public by attacking me and saying, oh, well, Chris has taken money from here or there. In fact, I have not done that. In fact, at the beginning of this campaign, I said specifically I would not take money from the underwriters or the employees of underwriters from people of this state, whereas Joe Suggs said he would not take contributions from anybody who does business with the office. The numbers, like a hockey game, the scoreboard is clear.
We have about 30 seconds.
You have raised $400,000. 70% of that comes from people who do business with your office. Okay. I've raised $100,000, and you have, in fact, said only that I've taken it from people who are in financial services, not from people who do business with the office.
And here's the hypocrisy.
He points out that it's Robinson and Cole and it's for $50.
Here's the hypocrisy.
You've got about 15 seconds.
A candidate, my opponent says he hasn't accepted. Here are the people who do business with my office and who solicit me for business that he has accepted money from. Robinson and Cole.
$50, Joe. Read the number. Read the number.
May I? The Cigna Corporation, Whitman and Ransom,
Read Whitman and Ransom,
Thomas
$50
Advisory,
on that list.
all of these firms, 24% of his campaign
Capital,
contributions
your #1 contributor,
come from businesses
Atlanta,
that solicit me and
NCM
solicit
Capital,
business with the state of Connecticut.
$10,000.
And
Pullman and Conley, Bridgeport,
what he's basically saying is that he
Okay,
has not
we're going
accepted
to have to wrap on this one. We're obviously going to have to get into this a little
Duby,
more
take a look at the
detail.
numbers he's showing you.
Okay, hopefully the voters will as well. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Suggs and Mr. Burnham. That's it for this week's CT-94. Beginning next week and for the following 2 weeks, we're taking this show on the road to the Museum of American Political Life at the University of Hartford for the first in our series of congressional debates leading up to Election Day. I'm Duby McDowell, and we will see you then for CT-94.
Demi Moore's mom in big trouble. Watch Inside Edition.